So hey there, it's Simeon back with you on my YouTube channel. Thanks a lot for visiting. We're still here at the UFO MegaCon in Laughlin, Nevada, and we've got a very special guest for you. This is Richard C. Doty, who's a former counterintelligence officer for the Air Force.
That's correct.
Correct? And we've learned about you from Stephen Greer's movie Unacknowledged. You had quite an extensive interview there in the extra section. And apparently the Air Force has been interested in this issue for a long time, quite seriously, right?
Oh, yes.
What's your position on the reality of the phenomena, and what was your role in sort of investigating it in your capacity in the Air Force?
Well, everyone knows that Project Blue Book closed in '69 after the Condom Report. That was the official and public acknowledgement by the Air Force that the Project Blue Book was over with.
Right.
However, the government continued to investigate UFO sightings.
They did.
Yeah, they did, and they did it in a covert way.
Mm-hmm.
They had investigators within various branches of the military that their job was to investigate sightings that involved Air Force personnel or military personnel, military property, military aircrafts, or if there was some sort of a danger to national security.
Right.
And so the investigation of UFOs continued, and it's continuing today. My job between 1978 and 1988, a 10-year period as a counterintelligence officer, was to investigate sightings or phenomena involving UFOs or maybe extraterrestrials.
So you were actually investigating this as a real phenomena, not just to debunk it, but on the other side, you were actually concerned, your superiors were concerned, this is something we need to figure out what it is. It could threaten the security of an Air Force base or something like that.
Right. And there was two levels of the investigation process. One that we found, or Air Force personnel or Air Force pilots found UFOs or photographed them or seen them or had some kind of contact with them. And secondly, the public coming to us and saying, we saw a UFO, we saw an alien ship land or crash, we saw ETs walking around this location. In some of those instances, we would try to disinform them.
Yes.
If in fact we knew that what they were seeing was maybe even a classified government project. So we didn't want them involved in or thinking that what they were seeing was government, that was a secret Air Force project or aircraft, or because we didn't want at that time the Soviets or our adversaries to know that we had that. So we would conduct some sort of an operation to disinform them, make them think of what they were seeing was in fact the UFOs.
Yeah.
And not government crafts.
So you guys were muddying the waters, but with the intent of keeping the Soviets perhaps from finding out about classified technology. You could kind of justify it that way. That's for the greater
correct.
Defense of the country. We don't want our adversaries to start looking in this particular direction. So you'd actually make it look actually like something mysterious or like a UFO.
Well, we wouldn't. I mean, most of these reports were done by people who actually saw something.
Yeah.
And if we knew what they
had seen
was say for instance an F-117 in a flight operation and back in the 70s and 80s that was still classified, or an Aurora plane or some other secret plane.
Yeah.
We knew what it was. But the public's coming in and telling us, we just saw a UFO. They don't know what it was. So all our job was to convince them what they saw was a UFO, extraterrestrials, and not something that we had.
I can understand that. Now, you have come forward and saying in the past that some of what you were doing was actually to influence journalists away from perhaps would be classified projects, or would it be to sort of disinform them in a general sense? What would be the logic behind influencing journalists in the capacity? So you mentioned this in Unacknowledged.
Yeah, well, what we would do is we'd have informants within every news organization.
You did.
In where I was stationed in Albuquerque, we had all the local TV and radio stations covered.
You
In
did.
that we had a source of information, a snitch or whatever you want to call it, within each organization, news organization. And we specifically told them what to watch out for. If people came in with stories about high technology or something to do with the Air Force, we wanted to know about it before they printed it or before they aired it on television. And then if they had something that we knew about that might be classified or highly sensitive, then we would try to influence them not to report it or to sway it away from the government and maybe in something extraterrestrial. Now, we weren't always successful in doing that. We would try to persuade them, but sometimes it didn't work. But we just had eyes and ears within the news organizations.
And the Air Force could justify that in the sense that we're protecting, again, classified technology that's essential for the defense of the whole country.
Exactly. It wasn't actually an Air Force project.
Yeah,
it was a Defense Intelligence Agency.
DIA project.
DIA project.
Was it technically legal to do what you did? I mean, did it break any laws?
No, absolutely no laws. We didn't force, we didn't bully them.
We didn't break any laws. Influencing journalists.
Right. And all they had to say was no, we weren't going to do it. And there's nothing we would have done about it.
Yeah. Exactly. Now, were there any cases where, I was kind of intrigued by your comment and unacknowledged that you said there might have been occasions where you actually convinced people that they were having some sort of continuing ET contact?
Yes.
Around their home. Would that involve even like dressing up as an ET or doing something that would make them think something was happening in their location that wasn't? Would it go that far?
I didn't personally do that, but we had teams of people that did that.
You had teams of people that did that.
And it would have had to been something that extraordinary. Something
really
that they had an experience with, that we knew about, that we didn't want them to connect it to a project.
To a classified project, yeah.
So that's what it was, another section, not me, that would come in and try to convince them. They would be people that were not military. They were people that were trained actors.
Trained actors?
Yeah, absolutely.
Would they dress up as Greys or something?
No.
Okay.
They would just come in as a UFO investigator or
Men in Black.
Some connection to the UFO phenomenon. And they would come in, wouldn't be military. They'd have long hair, beards, and they would try to convince this person, hey, I've had those experiences too. I met this Gray, and that type of thing. They would influence them, and they would try to influence them or encourage them to continue what they're doing, and that what they were doing was actually involving ETs.
So they would, again, not be looking in the direction of technology that you didn't want them to see.
Exactly.
How do you feel now that all this information has come out about the Nimitz event, and we have the TTSA group, and we're told that the Pentagon did have a UFO study program that we're told probably still continues? Do you think that's likely, that the investigations are still continuing?
Oh, absolutely.
So does that imply, based on your knowledge, that this is a real phenomena that's very challenging to explain?
I can guarantee it's a real phenomenon.
It's real.
I was briefed into the program. I know that we've had contacts since Roswell. The U.S. government knows about it. And we have sections within the government that are dealing exclusively with this phenomenon. And not just sightings of unidentified crafts, but also the abduction.
Abduction, that's a real phenomenon.
That's a real phenomenon. I didn't know about that until I started investigating some detailed incidents involving abductions in the early 80s, when a group of DIA personnel came down, agents with DIA, to take over an investigation. And I started about an abduction. And these guys came in and said, we're going to take this over. And I said, who are you guys? Yeah. He said, we're from DIA, and this is what we do. And I said, you mean we have a section within DIA that investigates abductions? And this is like 1980. And they said, yes. I said, well, how long have you guys been doing this?
Yeah.
He said, for many years. So the government, yeah, see, I didn't know that before, and I
You didn't
learned
even know that.
I didn't know existed, and I didn't even believe in abductions or anything about abductions during that time frame. But I was
So,
schooled in it.
so were you working in counterintelligence? Later, you found out the DIA has a program to investigate abductions.
Yeah, I started in counterintelligence in 1978.
Okay, 78. So a couple
Right
years
out of
later.
college, and I got briefed into the program, but the program that I was briefed into only dealt with the United States involvement with the recovery of crashed UFOs and ET bodies, but it had nothing to do with abductions. That was a different compartmented. Within the military, there's compartmentalization.
Oh yes, yeah.
And this group within DIA was compartmented. I didn't have a clearance for that, so I didn't know about it.
So the crashes are real.
Crashes are real.
How many roughly would you have found out about of real?
Well, and when I was briefed into the program in 1979, I don't recall I can't recall every single crash, but Roswell was real. Two different crashes connected to Roswell, one in the 47 in Roswell, one in Magdalena, West Magdalena, Horse Mesa in 1949. They believe there was same group of aliens. The Kingman crash,
yep, we heard about
the
that,
Kingman
yes.
crash only involved one craft that I was briefed in. Now, I'm not going to deny that this guy might have more information, and then a craft in Canada that occurred at near a radar site along the Dew Line. This is early warning site in 1959. That's the one that Daniel Shen was talking about, with Air Force personnel around. Crash in the snow.
Oh, that's what we know. So you can tell us what that was.
Yeah, that was a crash. That was a crash in 1959.
A 59 crash.
At a Air Force, it was a joint Canadian Air Force site, a Dew Line site in Canada.
When he saw this in the classified section of Library of Congress, were these crashes, based on your knowledge, are these literally extraterrestrial craft? What's your sense of the identification? Are they coming from another part of the galaxy? Did anyone ever talk? Where are they coming from?
Well, I was never briefed into that. I'm sure their government knows. We
Far
know
away?
that EBA, we know that the live alien that was in captivity from 48 to 52, he came from Zeta Reticuli.
Yeah.
And he described it into a star chart. So we knew that. And I was never briefed in anything else. I mean, I'm sure we know. I know the government has a list of extraterrestrials that have visited Earth, or they've captured, or they've had bodies of, and there are 9 of them. I know that.
9 species.
9 species that they know of, and this was in 78, so maybe they know more now.
78. And you're allowed
79.
79. You're allowed to talk about this. This doesn't violate anything.
Not classified anymore. I signed a security oath for 25 years, and that was long gone. So I'll take the heat for it if they want to come back after me.
Where did the EBA alien come from? Which crash? Did he just show up, or was it? Oh, he's from the Roswell crash. You just can't tell. Okay, so he's from the Roswell crash. Now, you mentioned the abductions. So, do you think that there are still units right now of the government that investigate alien abductions? Is this a semi-common phenomenon, like we're told at these UFO conferences? Is it rare? What's your guesstimate?
I don't know for a fact. I don't know what the government actually knows, but it's my opinion that it's a rare phenomenon. It's rare. Now, I'm a member of the Retired Intelligence Officer Association.
Yeah.
We meet twice a year, or sometimes more at funerals, unfortunately. And there are retired intelligence officers who worked in that particular section. So they speak up about it.
Mm-hmm.
And there are some very interesting cases that they talk about at these meetings. But I was never personally involved or had access to everything the government had knows about.
Right, because it's compartmentalized.
Because of compartmented.
Is this something that they say they're concerned about in terms of, this implies that another species is coming here, entering the atmosphere, taking people up, doing experiments? We don't know what exactly.
Well,
are they concerned about it, or are they?
President Reagan was so concerned about it because of an incident that happened has never been declassified, where a group of military officers were abducted, and they were literally tortured by these extraterrestrials. And that was part of why he started the Strategic Defense Initiative,
Yeah.
Star Wars, back in the early 80s.
Right.
He wanted a space-based defense system to protect us against the extraterrestrials. And he said that at the United Nations.
Right, right.
He said it in a speech in Michigan. I mean, there's 5 or 6 different ways. He let the cat out of the bag, so to speak, talking about it, because he'd been briefed in it, and he was very, very interested in this subject, and he was very concerned about the United States, and he was concerned about these hostile aliens.
And that's what the Star Wars Initiative, Strategic Defense Initiative, was really about.
It was
It
really
wasn't
about.
to get zap Soviet missiles as they
Well,
came
I think
over.
that's
It had
the,
a double
that's
meaning.
the public concept of it, but privately and clandestinely or secretly, it was also used. It could be used to defend the Earth against extraterrestrials. And now some people will say today, right now, that we do have a system up there. I don't know that personally.
You don't know personally.
I was never briefed into it. I know that at one point during my investigations, I was briefed into a program where we had deep space satellites.
Deep space satellites.
We sent satellites from Vandenberg Air Force Base out in our solar system to protect us or detect things.
Really?
I didn't know the entire program, but I was briefed into the periphery of it. And I know that was that existence. I think it's still in existence today.
It's kind of like that old sci-fi movie series from the UK in the 70s called UFO, where they have these satellites way out there and they detect these objects. That's actually real.
It's probably, that's real.
And so one last thing, what was the overall feeling based on your knowledge about the intent of these extraterrestrials? Some of them hostile, some of them neutral perhaps, some of them just observing?
Some of them, like the Even group, the Greys, were docile. They weren't here to harm us. They were here for space exploration. They were exploring the universe, and happened upon our solar system some years ago, probably 2,000 years ago, and came back to visit. And but there are, I know, the government considers several groups that are hostile.
And is there anything that's done to sort of protect the population, or can these extraterrestrials just come and go as they please because their technology is so sophisticated?
There's not much we can do about it.
Not much we can do.
They can come and do what they want to, because if they're, I mean, there's some civilizations that are visiting us are 5,000-7,000 years more advanced than we are. Mm-hmm. So we can't even understand their propulsion system and their cloaking system and how they can appear and disappear. So how would we defend against that?
I've talked to high-level scientists, people that are not really identified with the UFO field, who told me that they've been approached by the government to look at parts and pieces and see if they can figure out what it is. And they say it's just 1,000 years ahead of where we are. That's accurate. It's so far advanced, it's this type of nanotechnology that's almost impossible for our level of science to understand.
I worked, and I was going to disclose that in my speech. I worked for Dr. Puthoff.
Oh, you did? You know how?
10 years.
Because he gave us a talk at SSE in June 2018 right here in Las Vegas, and he said the government's been studying this whole time. He talked about blue shifts. Mm-hmm. Oh, so you know about all this?
Absolutely.
You know,
okay. I worked for him 10 years, or almost 11 years.
Yeah.
And I knew what he was briefed into. I was briefed into it. Some of these highly classified DARPA projects are still highly classified. There's been literally probably 20 to 30 top scientists in the nation that were brought in, shown an object or shown a piece of object or showed a picture of something, and saying, can you identify this? And especially the propulsion system. I mean, we have propulsion systems out of Area 51. I worked at Area 51, and they can't understand them. They can't explain how it would work.
It seems to interact directly with the quantum vacuum.
Exactly, the quantum vacuum.
The density of it, the craft would almost like slide like a hockey puck on ice, right? It just there's slight pressure, but that's how. So it's not a propulsion system as we know it. It's some sort of direct physics.
And it's also can be fluid. The craft can be a solid, and all of a sudden it becomes fluid. And I mean, I don't know how to describe it. I'm not
transform into something else.
Transform into something else.
People see this occasionally.
Yes.
The morphine. That's a real phenomenon.
Morphing it from a solid metal, appearing to them to be a metal object, into something that's fluid. And there's a video that was out there in I don't remember now. It was in 2004 or 5. It was at one of these conventions that was privately shown, depicting this person was filming this. It was a military person off an aircraft carrier. I think it was a Kitty Hawk, where the sailor filmed this thing coming in, and all of a sudden, from a solid to a almost like watery object. And then went back to a metal.
Wow.
So it's out there. How can you explain that? The Cash-Landrum incident, 1980. I was involved in that. The craft was an extraterrestrial craft, but the propulsion system was one of ours. It was a nuclear propulsion system because they couldn't fly the craft because they couldn't understand it with the alien propulsion system. So they put this nuclear propulsion system, relatively experimental, on this craft, and they flew it around Nevada for weeks and weeks and months, and they had no problem. As soon as they flew from Area 51 down to an Air Force base in Texas, they developed a number of problems with it.
Yeah,
and it was going to supposedly crash, and unfortunately, Cash-Landrum's people were in that vehicle. It poured some radiation on them.
Yeah, we had a death from it, right? So it's do people in the military feel that is a very regrettable aspect? But we don't really find out very much about that. It's so highly classified.
It's still classified. Those people were paid, and the government paid them, and they treated who they could. But it's. I'm not involved in that part of the government operations. I investigated, and I saw some things that I regret seeing, and I've never done anything that I regret doing because I was ordered to do it. I did everything I did was sanctioned by the United States government. I did what I was told to do, when I was told to do it, and how I was told to do it. Was it always morally right in my mind? No. There's things that I probably, if I had a choice, wouldn't do it. But I had a job to do.
Yeah. About Cash-Landrum, just one more question about it. Do we know which sort of species that kind of craft came from?
No, I don't.
And so it was basically something that had been recovered, something perhaps that has been
recovered,
crashed, or could have been conceivably shot down, something.
Possibly, I don't know.
But the engine didn't work, and so they put in our conventional nuclear propulsion, and
ours was experimental, and that's been out. I mean, you can look up that and figure out what kind of propulsion system we were using. It was a nuclear propulsion. I don't exactly know what, but the propulsion that was on the craft, I guess we didn't have any extraterrestrials that we captured from the crash or however they got it to tell us how it worked.
Yeah.
So we couldn't make it work, so we put our own propulsion system on.
I get it. So just to sum up, Richard, you started out sort of in counterintelligence to create deception for a national security purpose, and you've become a believer in the whole thing. You're a believer, and you're here at this conference.
That's why
I noticed you're here. You're still here to learn, like the rest of us.
I've been here many conferences.
Many conferences.
And I'm here to learn.
Kind of like Dr. Hynek, right?
I started out as a skeptic. I was never involved in this stuff growing up. I came from a military background. My father was in the military. My uncle was in the military. And I was never interested in UFOs. My brother was. He read everything there was to know about UFOs. I never did. I wasn't interested in it. And then I go to work for the government, and I'm briefed into the program that I didn't know exist. And now I'm here. I'm for 10 years I investigated them.
Yeah.
And now I got out. And over the years I've learned a great deal that I didn't know when I was in.
Yeah.
because it was compartmented.
And
now
that's what Hal actually said to me at IRVA SSC. He said this in his lecture, that he's concerned that there's so much compartmentalization that we might fall behind other countries in figuring out how this.
absolutely.
Is that a real concern?
That's a real concern. I was at Area 51. There was a supervisor and 4 of our agents in a room, building 432 at Area 51. I sat in one corner, another agent sat in another corner. I had my job, he had his job to do. I wasn't briefed into what he was doing, and he wasn't briefed into what I was doing.
You're sitting across from each other.
And that's compartmentalization.
And it has its drawbacks, right?
Oh, a lot of
National
drawbacks.
security has drawbacks.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Well, Richard, thanks very much for
You're
sharing
very
your
welcome.
story. We'll look forward to your talk.
Okay, thank you.